And we're back. Another episode of MnM Going Deep. The preseason has now set and is complete. Finito. Fin, as in some old Fin films might say at the end. Today is Tuesday, August 27th, and the NFL cuts have taken place. So all the NFL teams are getting down to a 53-man roster. If you're familiar with your team, you know some of those guys that were on the edge, and then you know some of those guys that were vying for positions and really working hard in the preseason in order to get roster positions. So take a look at your team's roster. I'll go through a little bit of each team and who they cut and who they definitely kept. Maybe placed on the reserve slash suspended roster. A lot of players that are known, like one off the top of my head is AJ Dillon is now on the injured reserve all of a sudden with a neck injury. I think he had that at the end of last year, but he's now out for the year. And another one I saw was Elijah Mitchell. What do you think, Cole? Oh, wait. Sorry, guys. There is no Cole. So, little background info on this episode and why I'm going to be solo dolo. On Sunday, Cole and I recorded probably maybe 2.5 hours of our podcast. And at the end, I realized I never pressed record. So, as punishment, I'm here doing solo dolo, and I'm going to take you guys through everything that potentially Cole and I covered. Probably will forget some, with a little twist. I am going to, with every mistake I make, because sometimes I have word vomit, I'm going to take a shot of beer. I have a Dave and Buster's shot glass. Oh no, spilled a little bit. If you're watching the video, you saw that. That's a little weird. Yeah, I have a Dave and Buster's shot glass. I'm really good at the SpongeBob game at Dave and Buster's, and I stack tickets on that machine. And I got a shot glass the last time I went to Dave and Buster's, which I don't know when that was, but all right, first shot. All right, so let's get into this. So this week we were supposed to cover the NFC and AFC South, no, West. Look, one mistake right there. Boom, shot. Here we go. AFC NFC West divisions. Some pretty cool stuff going on over there. Obviously, both contenders in the Super Bowl last year, the Chiefs and the 49ers, are both in the West divisions in their respective conferences. So we have a lot that we have to cover over there. But since today was NFL cut day and everybody's got to get down to the final 53, I'll take you through a couple teams, a couple notable things that happened. First, we'll start off with the NFC East. Dallas Cowboys. They had Carl Lawson in camp to be a pass rusher on the side of Demarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons. So that was an addition that they had. Yada yada yada. Big thing that they did today, they traded for Peyton Hendershot. Dude, I've never heard of. I don't know why that was like a notification I got on my phone, but it was. They waived David Durden, Darrell Johnson. Oh, let me just say this real quick. They signed CeeDee Lamb to, I believe it was a $164 million deal over 4 years. CeeDee Lamb's about to make a lot of money. So CeeDee Lamb got paid. Jerry Jones opens up his wallet and gets CeeDee Lamb penned down to a long-term deal. Um, Ripple effects in the NFL from that is definitely going to be Jamar Chase. Look, with him looking for his deal, we'll have to see what those numbers look like when it gets done. He really wants to stay in Cincinnati. He wants to solidify his career there. He said the other day that he thinks that he wants to spend his whole career there, if not if not the bulk of it. So he wants to stay there. He loves playing with Joe Burrow. And then obviously Brandon Ayuk is the other big one. We'll see how those numbers pan out for him. Doesn't have any, this article I have open doesn't say anything for the Giants, but it goes down to the Philadelphia Eagles. They cut big names that I see on this list right here are Paris Campbell, wide receiver, journeyman. Uh, he was on the Giants the last couple of years. He's gone. That's about it for them. Washington Commanders. Ugh. tough one to see right off the bat. There was a comeback story potentially with the Washington Commanders this year with Martavis Bryant. If nobody remembers Martavis Bryant, he was an athletic freak for the Pittsburgh Steelers a few years ago. Had trouble staying on the roster, whether it be I know he did start having some injuries, but he also had some trouble off the field with drugs and alcohol and ending up getting suspended for those types of things. He was a beast, and he did make some plays for the Washington Commanders in the preseason, so it actually kind of stinks seeing him go. But I think I saw something where it had been like I don't remember how many months, but it was a lot of months in between his last touchdown and the touchdown he scored on Sunday, which was nice to see. It was like a heartwarming story. We'll see if he gets another shot. Other names on this list are Sam Hartman, the quarterback, Trace McSorley also cut. We'll go down into the NFC North. We've got um they're mentioning something about Velus Jones. I was like, they cut Velus Jones? No, they didn't. But they waived Micah Barkersville, reserve injured listed Dante Pettis, wide receiver. No really big names there. Detroit Lions. Jake Fromm was cut. Not 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 very many people jumping off the page. Now down into the Green Bay Packers. Like I said, they put AJ Dillon on the injured reserve list. Um, Tough spot for him. Um, yeah. Oh, Cole probably would hate me if I didn't mention this, but in Green Bay they had a kicker battle all preseason. Anders Carlson obviously was their kicker last year. He missed the kick against the 49ers. Today, unfortunately, he was cut. They also cut another kicker, Alex Hale. I didn't hear too much about him. I forget who the third guy was. Oh, is Greg Joseph. Greg Joseph was the other guy, so I guess Greg Joseph gets the job over him. It'll be interesting to see if they practice squad Anders Carlson because I think he's a younger guy. Also, they cut Sean Clifford, the former Penn State quarterback. Minnesota, they biggest move is they waived Louis Cine, their number one pick in the 2022 draft. This closes the door on one of the most least productive first round picks for the Minnesota Vikings in recent memory. That stinks. Kind of just lost just a bust of a draft pick there. I'll take a shot for that one because I literally could not think of words. That was word vomit coming out of my mouth. On this list too, I see two names that pop off the page that kind of bigger names. N'Keal Harry getting cut from the Vikings, and then also Robert Tonyan. We'll head to the NFC South. They kept Taylor Heineke as their third string quarterback. That's kind of like their biggest news of the day. Keeping him on the roster. Obviously, they have Michael Penix, and then they also have Kirk Cousins that we've already talked about. Going into the Carolina Panthers, they released wide receiver Terrace Marshall, the LSU product. Doesn't really come as a surprise. He's a later round draft pick, and he also, it wasn't adjusting to the NFL that well. Um, he had a solid camp and also looked like he was outperforming Xavier Leggett, the first round pick, but they end up having to move on from him. Um, I don't really see any other big names on their list. Going into the New Orleans Saints, they cut Jonathan Abram, the former first round pick safety from uh, Alabama. I think a bunch of people remember from Hard Knocks a couple years ago. He was on the Raiders at the time. He couldn't pronounce the word salmon. That's basically the biggest thing that I remember about him. Uh, Amon-Ra St. Brown's brother was on the New Orleans Saints. He was cut. Also, Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. His brother was on the New Orleans Saints. Samson Nacua. He was also cut today. No news out of Tampa as of right now. Arizona Cardinals. There's a mistake right there. Another shot for this guy. I'll tell you guys when I finish a beer too. They cut running back Michael Carter. That's basically their biggest. biggest move, and then they traded for Cameron Thomas. Um, Los Angeles Rams, their biggest move was trade. They traded inside linebacker Ernest Jones away. He was entering the final year of his rookie deal to the Tennessee Titans, so they lose him. Um, could be ripple effects of not being able to sign contracts because they got contracts they got to do later on. Even though they didn't really get rid of, but they lost obviously Aaron Donald this offseason. Going into the 49ers, I kind of already mentioned it, but their biggest thing is that they put Elijah Mitchell on the injured reserve list. I think I didn't say Elijah Mitchell earlier, so I'll take a shot for that. I think I butchered his last name. And then obviously besides Brandon Ayuk looking for a new deal, Trent Williams, their stud left tackle, is still looking for a restructure of his contract, and he's still not at camp. Nor is he. He said he's not going to play until he gets a structured deal. Um, Another note for them, but I'll get into this later. But they placed Dre Greenlaw on the physically unable to perform list. If anybody remembers in the Super Bowl last year, he was running off the sideline. He went down just coming off the sideline. He planted and he tore his Achilles. So he's on the physically unable to perform list. No really going into the AFC East. No really like big moves coming out of the Buffalo Bills. Big name I see off the list, two actually, are Ben DiNucci and Frank Gore Jr., which Frank Gore Jr. is a little bit surprising to me because he was having a good camp from all reports out of Buffalo. They also did cut Lael Collins, the former first round pick. Um, he was most notably on the Cincinnati Bengals recently. Miami Dolphins, they cut Mike Mike White, the famous Mike White that won those couple of games for the New York Jets a couple of years ago in favor of Skylar Thompson to be the backup for Tua. Um, no other really big names coming out of here. New England, they trimmed their quarterback room down to three, so they cut Bailey Zappi. They keep Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, and Joe Milton. Looking at all the names on this list for the New England Patriots, don't really see anybody big besides Christian Barmore being put on that injured list, designated to return though. New York Jets, they traded rookie punt returner, kick returner, cornerback Brandon Codrington. Uh, he made some moves in special teams. They traded him to the Bills. Sorry, I'm pausing so much. I'm like reading at the same time because like it's hard to keep up with 32 NFL teams. And I'm doing this alone, so I can't really like have somebody to fill the space when like my mind goes absolutely numb. Okay, into the AFC North, nothing really out of Baltimore. Cincinnati Bengals were pretty quiet too. When I say that these teams have been quiet, it's that the names that they're cutting to trim down to the 53, no one notable. No one really notable. Um, on the Cincinnati Bengals, nothing really big here. The Browns, my team. Interesting thing they did is they kept four quarterbacks on the roster. They kept Deshaun Watson, obviously, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie from last season, Tyler Huntley, who's been with the Baltimore Ravens the last couple years, and obviously Jameis Winston, who they signed in the offseason. Rumors swirling around that they're looking to trade Jameis or Tyler Huntley off the roster. Do I agree with that? I don't know. I guess they saw something this this preseason with Dorian Thompson Robinson that they think he's going to be a viable backup for Deshaun Watson this year. Also notable that they cut Deontay Foreman, who a lot of people thought that he was going to be kind of like the bell cow for the Browns while Nick Chubb recovers from injury. Got the case. The Browns actually just keep two running backs on their roster, which is surprising to me. I think that points to them potentially looking for a trade or looking at other teams that have cut people off their roster that they're interested in and then bringing somebody. The two guys that obviously they kept are Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. And then obviously we got the news this past, I think 2 days ago that Nick Chubb is going to be start the season on the physically unable to perform list with a designation return in week 5. So he'll miss the first 4 weeks of the season. Um, Couple other notes for the Browns. They end up cutting Michael Woods and Jalen Darden. Michael Woods, obviously being the wide receiver 6th round pick in 2022 out of Oklahoma. He had impressed a lot in camp this past year and last year. The issue being that he tore his Achilles, so he was out for a elongated period of time. They also cut Saiki Ika, who was their 3rd round draft pick in 2022. Defensive tackle out of Baylor. He's gone now. That doesn't surprise me though. The Browns have loaded up on their defensive line with vets around the league the last couple of years. There's one other name on this list. Oh yes, and obviously the commissioner's exempt list, Mike Hall. If no one's read into this story, Mike Hall was the Browns' 2nd round draft pick this year. He got into a little trouble a couple weeks ago with a police report being filed of domestic violence occurring at his home with him and his girlfriend. Obviously, like stories have been traded and things like that. There's a police report on the whole thing. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to get into that thing. But Michael Hall, obviously being on the commissioner's exempt list, that's another thing that the Browns had to do. Going into the Pittsburgh Steelers, my least favorite team in the entire NFL, they released Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins, who had been with the Philadelphia Eagles the last couple seasons. A lot of people thought he was going to step it up here in Pittsburgh. Kind of makes the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiving core a little bit light. Obviously, they have George Pickens, but they're going with Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, and then Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller, famously with Tampa Bay for a couple seasons when Tom Brady was still there. Calvin Austin is a speedster guy. Definitely could be a burner. And then Van Jefferson, who's been with the Rams the last few seasons. That's a light wide receiving room for two guys, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who are trying to make a name for themselves in Pittsburgh. Interesting. We'll see if the Pittsburgh Steelers end up making a move for a wide receiver in the coming days. Into the AFC South, Houston Texans' biggest move for them was they kept Cam Akers on the 53-man roster. If nobody saw on Sunday, holy moly, he put so many defenders into the spin cycle. I think he had 3 spin moves right in a row, and he was cutting it up and dicing it up. It's good to see Cam Akers running like that again because he had that ability all the way back to his Florida State days, but unfortunately, what was it? He tore his left Achilles and then he tore his right Achilles in the following season. Unfortunate for him. But for the Houston Texans, that's kind of like their biggest news. There's a couple names on this list that I know of, but nothing really major. Going into the Indianapolis Colts, they end up keeping Sam Ellinger on the final roster, which is kind of a surprise. Um, they keep Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson as the backups for Jonathan Taylor. Names off this list. Couple of names that make me laugh. First one being Jannard Avery, former Brown defensive end, and then wide receiver Laquan Treadwell. I remember when he committed to Ole Miss as the #1 recruit in the country. Wide receiver, obviously famously drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, and then panning out into nothing. Jacksonville Jaguars. I almost said the Jacksonville. So I'll take a little beer shot for that. This shot glass is really tiny. I'm finding out, guys. Also, by doing this, it kind of wets the palate a little bit so I can keep going. Uh, Travis Travis Gibson, defensive end for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Um, he was supposed to be a rotational pass rusher behind Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. But they ended up trading him away. Uh, just too many guys. Too many guys. Not gonna get him enough playing time. On to the Tennessee Titans. Mm, oh, big move for them. They traded away Malik Willis, the famous quarterback from Liberty, a couple of years ago that they drafted. He actually goes to Green Bay. I wonder if Cole's excited about that one. And then obviously we've talked about them trading for Ernest Jones already with the Los Angeles Rams. Onto the AFC West, who we'll get real in depth with later. Wide receiver Tim Patrick tried his best to really make the roster, but a lot of things circulating right now that I think he's going to be traded. He's not on this list of people being cut. Oh no, he is. He was cut. Never mind. That's a mistake. Let me take another shot for that mistake. Fuck that one up. Another name on this list that's pretty big is Samaje Perine. He's been cut as well. That kind of makes me wonder if Javonte Williams is looking real good in camp. No notes out of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, they have just the greatest roster ever. Um, so onto the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, I saw a name on here that made me laugh. I'll take a shot for that one. But it looks like they're just gonna rock with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. They cut Nathan Peterman. That was the name that made me laugh. It's a guy that threw four interceptions in a half of football once. Funny. On to the Los Angeles Chargers. They keep seven wide receivers. They end up not trimming the fat in that room. And that's a lot because I can only name two of them. Actually, no, three. What is it? Josh Palmer, Lad McConkey, and Quentin Johnston. Yeah, I can only name three of them. All right, so this is what we're gonna do now. I've kind of touched everything about cutting down to the 53 man roster for everybody. The biggest thing that we were gonna cover this week was the AFC NFC West divisions. So we'll get into that. We'll start with the NFC West. I think we'll start with the worst team. Also starts with the letter A, Arizona Cardinals. This offseason, little interesting one. Obviously, they had a high draft pick at number 4 overall. Heavy quarterback draft. Um, so a lot of people thought that they could potentially move up in the draft because of Kyler Murray's injury history. They end up opting away from that and they stick with Kyler Murray, which I don't think is a mistake. I think Kyler is a great NFL quarterback when he's healthy. Yes, he's a little undersized and things like that. And this recent injury history definitely brings to light maybe he's not fit for the NFL, but they're going to rock and roll with him. At the number 4 overall pick, obviously they take Marvin Harrison Jr. That was what most analysts deemed as their biggest need was wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr. tore it up at the Ohio State University the last couple of years. And then also, I think this was a good pick as well. In the third round with pick number 2, they take Trey Benson out of Florida State. I thought he was going to be a great running back, and I thought he was actually going to be drafted earlier than where he was third into and fell all the way to the third round. Um, for the Arizona Cardinals, sorry, my thing just deleted what I was looking at. Do 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 do. Okay. Um, they obviously lose Marquise Brown. He signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. Unfortunate, but time takes us apart, I guess. They signed Jonah Williams, the offensive tackle, in order to shore up the line in front of Kyler Murray. It's the second year. Is this Jonathan Gannon? I've always confused him and Shane Steichen. But it's the second year of Jonathan Gannon. For the Arizona Cardinals, over under 7.5 wins on this season. I'm bullish on the Cardinals this year, but after reviewing their schedule prior to this episode and on Sunday, it's going to be a little bit harder for them. The first 11 weeks of the season, it's not easy. They open the season at Bills. Right now, I have them templated with a loss there. Kyler's still coming back. Probably going to be a little bit slow. And then second game they have at home against the Rams. I have them winning there. Lions, third week of the season at home, have them losing, so they'll be 1-2. A little bit easier on this in the fourth week with home against the Commanders. and then at 49ers week 5, at Packers week 6, home against the Chargers week 7, at Dolphins week 8, home against the Bears week 9, home against the Jets week 10, and then their bye week week 11, then at Seahawks, at Vikings, home against the Seahawks again, Seahawks twice in 3 weeks, then home against the Patriots, at Panthers, at Rams, home against the 49ers to end the season. That first 10 weeks kind of is tough, especially with starting with Bills, Rams, Lions. Throw the 49ers, Packers, Chargers, Dolphins in there, and then you don't know what you're going to get out of the Bears, and then Jets could be really good this year. That is a tough first 10 weeks of the season. Right now I have them templated with a 9-8 record that could squeak them into the playoffs, depending on how the rest of the NFC pans out. But I'm bullish on the Cardinals this year. I think that they're going to be a much better team than they were last year. And then if you think back to last year, a lot of times they gave good teams tough games. You can remember back them beating the Eagles. You can remember back them beating the Cowboys, two top teams in the NFC, obviously last year, and they went toe to toe with them. And you know it's even crazier. Kyler Murray didn't play in the Cowboy game. That was not Kyler Murray. I totally can't remember who the starting quarterback was, but it wasn't Kyler. I do think he played in the Eagle game though. Right now, obviously 9-8. All right, let's go into the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are the defending NFC champs. They own the NFC right now. The NFC rolls through them. Big things coming out of them this year. Well, this offseason, I've kind of already touched on it with Brandon Ayuk searching for a new contract and then also Trent Williams searching for a new contract. Those are two integral pieces to their entire team and offense. In the draft this year, they drafted Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. If you look at any film coming out of training camp of Ricky Pearsall, he is getting no separation from defenders. A lot of people are thinking this might be a reach and a bust. They were obviously trying to replace Brandon Ayuk with him or potentially do that, but it's not looking great right now. Some marquee additions that they brought in Leonard Floyd, uh, journeyman edge rusher. Also, they bring in Malik Collins. Malik Collins, I've seen him in the preseason. He looks like a beast, man. Plugging the gaps, getting into the backfield as quick as can be. They lose their two other defensive tackles. That's why they brought in Malik Collins. They lost Eric Armstead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they obviously lost Javon Kinlaw as well. Right now on FanDuel, the San Francisco 49ers over under on their win total is 11 and a half wins. Pretty high. We'll get into their schedule in a second. The San Francisco 49ers, most famously right now, they open up against the Jets at home. Obviously, it's Aaron Rodgers' return to the NFL after tearing his Achilles last year, and it is his hometown. He's from San Francisco, so should be a crazy game. Right now, I have them templated to win that. Second week of the season, they're at Vikings. Third week of the season, at Rams. Home against the Patriots, home against the Cardinals, at Seahawks, home against the Chiefs, and home against the Cowboys. And then their bye week being in week 9. Coming out of the bye week, they go to at Tampa, uh, play the Buccaneers, and then they're home against the Seahawks, at Packers, at Bills, home against the Bears, home against the Rams, at Dolphins, home against the Lions, at Cardinals to end the season. Uh, Pretty tough schedule outside of their internal division opponents. You know, they start the season with the Jets. That could be a coin flip, really. You never really know how some of these teams really play on week 1. Sometimes it takes them a little bit to get them going. Um, then they also have a Super Bowl rematch against the Chiefs. Luckily, they're at home. They do end up playing the Cowboys. They also have a game against the Packers in Green Bay and a game at Buffalo later in the season. And then also have a NFC conference title rematch with Detroit. They are at home for that one, but I would look for Detroit to get some revenge in that game. Yep, I like I said, I have them going 15-2 right now. The top dogs in the NFC reign supreme again, being the NFC champs. That would probably be NFC champs right there. Obviously next week me and Cole probably get into some playoff talk, who we think is going to get into the playoffs and stuff, but we'll keep rocking and rolling here. We'll get into the Seahawks next. Interesting team. They fire Pete Carroll as their head coach. He'd been their head coach for so many years. He did get them that one Super Bowl. He should have gotten them two, but last couple seasons of the Seahawks, obviously Pete wasn't able to get what he wanted. Didn't get into the playoffs last year, had a really down year with Geno Smith. Um, I think that I'm not sold on Geno Smith. Obviously, they signed him to a pretty big contract. Still kind of favorable though. He's been in the league for a really long time. He knows what he's doing. He can read defenses and he can make plays, but there's just this side to Geno Smith that sometimes on it's like any given Sunday, you don't know what you're gonna get. So Seahawks, obviously, they move on from Pete Carroll, as I mentioned. They go with Mike McDonald. He was the defensive coordinator over in the for the Baltimore Ravens the last few seasons. Um, I didn't think it was his time to be a head coach. Obviously, maybe I'm completely wrong, but and I could be. It's very well could. I'm just a guy in his apartment talking to nobody about the Seattle Seahawks right now. But he could. I didn't think it was his time. That's all I'm saying. Uh, but in the draft, the Seahawks first round pick, they select Byron Murphy out of Texas, the big defensive tackle. Dude's a stud. They load up more on their defense, which makes sense. They're building the defense, and then I guess they're getting to the offense. Even though they have stud wide receivers, they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then at running back, they have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So we'll see what they do. A nice pick that they also had in the third round is Christian Haynes. Love that guy. UConn, baby. Um, we'll get into some additions and subtractions for the offseason here. Um, they obviously traded Drew Lock to the New York Giants. They bring in Sam Howell from the Washington Commanders. They bring in Jerome Baker, journeyman linebacker. They obviously lost Bobby Wagner, key integral part of their defense last year. He had spent a season with the LA Rams before that, so it's not like it's the first time without Bobby Wagner. So, um, but they did also re-sign defensive lineman Leonard Williams to a very big contract, 3 years, $64.5 million. They're shoring up that defense, man. Tariq Woolen, they have Witherspoon to go on the other side of Woolen, so they have a lot of pieces on that defense. I would say they're a head coach away or quarterback potentially. Is Geno really the guy? Can you trust Geno to beat a Jordan Love, a Jared Goff, a Brock Purdy with all the weapons he has in the playoffs? And I just don't see it, man. I don't see a world where that happens. I could be completely wrong and the Seahawks could win the Super Bowl, but they actually were my Super Bowl pick last year, if anybody remembers. I was high on them, but they did me dirty, and I'm turning my back on them. I'm turning my back on them, and you can't blame me for that. Seahawks, they open the season at home against the Broncos, at the Patriots after that, then home against the Dolphins, at the Lions, home against the Giants, home against the 49ers, at Falcons, home against the Bills, home against the Rams. Bye week 10. Week 11, they come back and they play at 49ers, and then they're home against the Cardinals, at Jets, at Cardinals, home against the Packers, home against the Vikings, at Bears, and then at Rams to end the season. Not the easiest of schedules either for the Seattle Seahawks. Dolphins, Lions, Falcons, Bills on there for their outside of the division opponents. And then the Packers too. Like that, those are not easy opponents, man. A lot of those could go either way. A lot of those could go either way. I don't see them beating the Lions. I don't see them beating the Bills. I could see them having trouble with the Falcons. I could see them having trouble with the Packers. Actually, I would pick the Packers in that game. And then obviously they have the Jets, which coin flip, coin flip. Um, let's get into the Rams. The Rams. Obviously, like the last couple of years, the Rams after their Super Bowl appearance where they won, Matthew Stafford brings the championship to LA, wins Sean McVay a title, wins Aaron Donald a title. Latin the next couple of years after the Super Bowl, a little bit of a crumble fest, a lot of injuries, kind of like an aging roster. They put it all out there in order to get that Super Bowl. They got it, so successful. If you can remember too, they traded away a lot of their draft picks in order to accumulate a lot of the guys that they had on that roster that ended up winning the Super Bowl for them. Um, Most notably, that one of the trades was for Von Miller. But this year they finally have a first round pick again. They draft Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State, really good player. And then the second round, with the seventh pick in the draft, they take Braden Fisk, defensive tackle out of Florida State, and then a notable guy that they took in the third round with pick 19 is Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan. A lot of people are high on Blake Corum, man. They think Blake Corum is going to be a guy. Some additions that they had in this offseason, kind of a surprising signing, but might as well take a risk. Tre'Davious White, the cornerback from Buffalo the last few years, you can remember him. He was a really talented player, but the last 2, 3 seasons, man, he's had so many injuries, and they're not light injuries, tearing an Achilles, tearing an ACL, um, that just deter a career. They also signed Darius Williams to a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. Right now on FanDuel, the over/under for the Los Angeles Rams win total is 8.5. So they're a little bit above the Seahawks. Seahawks were at 7.5. Remember that. Take a little shot to wet the palate, finish off this beer for you guys. Mm. Oh, yeah. All right, let's get into the schedule. All right, Rams. First game of the season at Lions. Rematch of that playoff game last year that honestly could have gone either way. One of the final plays, Sean McVay, instead of opting to go for it on fourth down, he decides to punt it and try and get the ball back late in the game. Obviously, he doesn't get the ball back. Detroit keeps it, keeps the ball away from him and Matt Stafford from getting it again, and they end up winning. And if you remember, Puka Nacua in that game went off. So, first game of the season at Lions, at Cardinals, home against the 49ers, at Bears, home against the Packers, bye week. Early bye week for the Rams. Could be favorable because remember, Matt Stafford last year got hurt in one of those early games, and then he had to sit out for a couple games. Um, After the bye week, they're home against the Raiders, then they're home against the Vikings, then at Seahawks, home against the Dolphins, at Patriots, home against the Eagles, at Saints, home against the Bills, at 49ers, at Jets, home against the Cardinals, home against the Seahawks. This is great podcasting. Me just reading an NFL schedule to you guys. It really is so good. Right now I have them templated with 12 wins, going 12-5. Big losses internal to the division, one to the Cardinals, one to the 49ers, have them upsetting the 49ers at least once. And then losing to the Seahawks too. You know, those internal division games, they go either way, man. And then I have them losing to the Lions in the first week of the season. Um, but Rams, I'm high on them, man. If Stafford's healthy, Cooper Kupp's healthy, Puka Nakua's healthy, Kyron Williams, big running back, like that team could be something. They've started to draft the defense, build up the defense a little bit more. They could be something. They could be scary. Um, in my opinion, though, I still think that division rolls through the 49ers, and the highest thing that the Rams could hope for is obviously the division title, but um, outside of that is probably the fifth seed in the NFC. I think that they're the best team that won't win their division. The only competitor in that in the NFC would probably be the Cowboys or Eagles, whoever doesn't win the NFC East, but I would probably pick the Rams over either one of those teams. Yeah, maybe the Eagles, maybe not the Eagles. I still think the Eagles could be what they were that Super Bowl year, man. There's a lot of potential on that team. All right, let's pivot. Let's head to the AFC. We're going to the AFC West, obviously. We'll start with the Broncos. Our boy Sean Payton still out there kicking it, humming, yada yada yada. If has anybody ever watched that movie about Sean Payton where Kevin James plays him, where he coaches like a youth football team when he was suspended? Terrible movie. Terrible. Don't know how Sean Payton could watch it and be like, "Yeah, I want people to remember me by this." Um, Anyways, Sean Payton, coach of the Broncos, last year was a disaster with Russell Wilson. And then also that defense too wasn't great either. They let Justin Simmons go, which is so surprising. He was probably one of the best safeties in the league. He goes to Atlanta now. Russell Wilson's now on the Pittsburgh Steelers, being paid by the Denver Broncos, though, which don't get me started on that one. Pittsburgh Steelers fans think they have like a cheap contract. You don't. You don't. Um, some notable key additions for the Denver Broncos this year. Let's upload the page. First one, first one I gotta talk about. They trade for Zach Wilson. Interesting. Maybe Zach Wilson could be something. Um, if anybody watched the last preseason game over the weekend, Zach Wilson actually played pretty well. Um, kind of will be interesting, especially with what they're going to do at quarterback, which I'm going to get into here. The Denver Broncos in the draft, they had the 12th overall pick in the first round. They go with Bo Nix, the quarterback out of Oregon, also out of Auburn. Don't really know how that one goes. He was not great at Auburn. He was a highly touted recruit when he first went to Auburn. Couldn't kick it. Transfers to Oregon, plays for Dan Lanning the next couple seasons, and he tears it up. He does a good job. He ends up getting drafted, the 12th overall pick. Uh, in the third round, they go with Jonah Ellis, the edge rusher out of Utah. In the fourth round, they go with Troy Franklin, the wide receiver out of Oregon. Uh, from what I've been seeing, Troy Franklin's not really adjusting to the NFL very well, which could be a problem. Um, and then obviously they ended up cutting Tim Patrick, kind of upsetting. And then also I just saw this name. I thought he would be drafted earlier, but they also got Audric Estime, the running back out of Notre Dame. Estime was really good last year. A lot of people thought he could sneak into that Heisman conversation. He didn't. And then he went to the NFL Combine. He ran a slower 40 time than a lot of people expected, and he's a bigger running back, so a lot of people ended up fading him, and the Denver Broncos get him in the fifth round. Right now on FanDuel, the Denver Broncos are templated with a over/under of 5.5 wins, and now we will get into their schedule just mentioned because we went over the Seahawks a couple minutes ago. The Broncos open up the season at Seahawks, then they are home against the Steelers, they're at Buccaneers, at Jets, home against the Raiders, home against the Chargers, at Saints, home against the Panthers, at Ravens, at Chiefs, home against the Falcons, at Raiders, home against the Browns, bye week. Yeesh. For a rookie quarterback to play that many weeks without your bye week where you could catch your breath a little bit is going to be tough. Just looking at a couple of those teams that I already mentioned, Seahawks, we just went over their defense. We just went all over all the pieces that they have. They have a defensive-minded head coach. Tough game. Second week of the season, Steelers, tough game. Third week of the season, Buccaneers. They're like 3 years removed from a Super Bowl. Don't It's not that much that far off anymore, man. Tough game. Fourth week of the season, Jets. Tough defense, even without Aaron Rodgers last year. Tough game. Then they also have their inner divisional games, which is Raiders and Chargers. Some lighter teams are Saints and Panthers, I guess. But then you have the Ravens, Chiefs, Falcons, Browns. Four tough opponents right there. I don't really know what the Falcons can be, but I'm gonna say that they're gonna be better than last year. And that's probably better than the freaking Broncos. Ugh. Feel bad for Bo Nix. I just hope he doesn't lose his confidence. He was a feel-good story the last couple of years in college football, having that rough start at Auburn, then going to Oregon and having the success that he did. All right, let's head to LA. LA. Can't believe they have two teams, man. They don't even have fans. LA, the LA Chargers. Let's talk about them for a second. LA Chargers. This team is talented. They have pieces on defense with Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. Quarterback. Quarterback's a stud. Long hair, tall, big arms, big arm, can throw it a mile. Justin Herbert. Then think about their offense for a bit. I mentioned their wide receiver core a little earlier. Mike Williams ain't walking through that door. Keenan Allen ain't walking through that door. Justin Herbert's going to have to throw to Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Josh Palmer. Not the best wide receiving group for your star quarterback. Not to mention, too, their offensive line had been banged up the last couple years. Uh, and then in the backfield, Austin Eckler ain't there anymore, baby. Gonzo. They bring in J.K. Dobbins from Baltimore, who the last 2 years has torn his Achilles, literally torn his Achilles twice. I don't think it's the same one. I think it's left and right. But what is he now? He had burst and juice back at Ohio State. And then they bring in Gus Edwards, who was a backup running back. He backed up J.K. Dobbins in Baltimore. He had a decent year last year, but I don't know, man. Harbaugh's tearing it down to the screws, and he's rebuilding it. In the draft this last year, I know their first round pick was the tackle out of Notre Dame, Joe Alt. Big dude, just a big dude. If you saw him on draft night, he was just a monster of a human sitting next to his two parents. They look like shrimps. Um, but yeah, it's just gonna take some time with the Los Angeles Chargers. It's not gonna be a quick thing. Um, yeah, I'm looking at their additions. I guess their biggest one on defense, two Puna Ford and Bud Dupree to add to that defensive line, and then they bring Denzel Perryman back at linebacker. All right, going into the schedule, they start the season home against the Raiders. Then they go at Panthers, at Steelers, home against the Chiefs. Bye week, week 4. Then at Broncos, at Cardinals, home against the Saints, at Browns, home against Titans, home against the Bengals, home against the Ravens, and then at Falcons, at Chiefs, home against the Buccaneers, home against the Broncos, at Patriots, at Raiders. If anybody's watching the video, I slowly was getting closer to my camera for that one. Kind of funny. Um, kind of tough schedule again. Whenever you got to play the Chiefs twice in a year, that's, not going to be fun, especially for a team that's rebuilding, even though you have Jim Harbaugh as a head coach. I think they'll probably upset the Chiefs one of those two games, but the likelihood of them beating the Chiefs twice, unlikely. So hopefully you beat the Raiders and the Broncos 4 times. That's 4 wins right there. Um, Having games against the Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Ravens, AFC North. I'm very familiar with that division. All going to be tough games. I think that they'll probably beat the Browns. Browns always have trouble traveling to LA, and they have to do it this year. Um, Falcons, we've already talked about them. Don't know really what they can be. Hey man, high for the Chargers is probably 11-6, which is much better than what you did last year. So Charger fans are probably gonna be happy. Um, let's get into the Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions. Report about the Chiefs besides, all of their players getting arrested for whether they're speeding in cars or being drunk or whatever. Yeah, that's basically it for the Chiefs. They re-signed a lot of the guys that had expiring contracts on their team. Two of them being very notable. One being Travis Kelce, and the other being Chris Jones. Chris Jones with his 5-year, $158 million deal, and then Travis Kelce with his 2-year, $34 million deal. Um, the other guy that they signed that was already on their roster that's key for them is Drew Tranquil, 3 years, $19 million. They bring in Marquise Brown from Arizona, speedy wide receiver. He did get hurt in the preseason, and he's doubtful for I think like the first 2, 3 weeks of the season. Um, and also kind of funny note here, Carson Wentz is the backup quarterback for Patrick Mahomes now. Um, oh, how the mighty have fallen, Carson. Um, in the draft, first round pick, 20th pick overall, Xavier Worthy out of Texas. Uh, little notable here, they traded up for that pick. They got it from Buffalo, in order to get Xavier Worthy. When I was watching the draft, that pissed me off. Like, Buffalo, you have had no luck beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. So why are you going to help them get the player they want in the draft? What are you doing? Anyways, they get Xavier Worthy, very fast, very talented, could be a very like Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes combo again in Kansas City. Will note though, Rashi Rice, he did get suspended. I forget the amount of games. Can't remember that off the top of my head, but um, Patrick Mahomes will be able to throw to Xavier Worthy in the first couple weeks of the season until Marquise Brown comes back. All right, defending Super Bowl champs open the season Thursday night football, home against the Ravens next week, home against the Bengals, at Falcons, at Chargers, home against the Saints. Bye week, week 5, early bye week for the Chiefs. That could be trouble, especially if they start slow, man. I don't doubt that they can handle the Ravens. I don't doubt that they can handle the Bengals. But those are two very tough teams. Um, you start the season 0-2 there. Best you're getting into your bye week is 3-2, and then you're gonna have to play 12 games straight. And since they're the Chiefs, on my tracker, I don't have labeled the Thursday night games. But since they're the Chiefs, some of these games are going to be prime time. After their bye, another tough opponent at 49ers. Then they're at Raiders, home against the Buccaneers, home against the Broncos, at Bills, at Panthers, home against the Raiders, home against the Chargers, at Browns, home against the Texans, at Steelers, and then at Broncos. A lot of tough opponents on that schedule, man, for the defending Super Bowl champs. At 49ers ain't going to be light. That team's going to come in there fucking pissed after last season. They're going to come in and try and make a statement on you. Then you got to go back to Buffalo after you beat them last year in Buffalo in the playoffs. That crowd's going to be crazy. And then we obviously talked about the Chargers right before this. My team, the Browns, honestly, they're going to be a fucking coin flip this year if their quarterback doesn't want to fucking play. And then home against the Texans. Pump the brakes on the Texans, man. Like everybody's deeming them the probably second best team in the AFC. Pump the brakes a little bit. Let fucking CJ Stroud play a couple more games and then make a decision on that one. Um, yeah, Chiefs, man. Tougher schedule than last year. They struggled a little bit last year, but notably, they probably have a better roster this year. And Chris Jones had a full year of camp. Last year, obviously, he was going through the contract stuff, so he wasn't there. So, Chiefs, I'd expect them to probably be the best team in the AFC again. All right, let's go to Vegas. Vegas Raiders. Last year, obviously, during the season, they end up firing head coach Josh McDaniel. Um, that was his second crack at being a head coach in the NFL. Couldn't cut it again. The team ended up turning on him. And then at the breaking point of the season, they turned to Antonio Pierce, who was on his staff, former Washington Redskin and New York Giant linebacker Antonio Pierce. Um, End up being the interim head coach, wins them a couple games down the stretch. Probably most importantly, the Christmas Day game against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. He beats them, which at the end of the season, Mark Davis ends up giving him the keys to the gate again. Most notably for the Raiders this offseason. Biggest signing being Christian Wilkins, 4 year, $110 million defensive tackle out of Miami. He had been on the Dolphins last couple of years. They also signed Gardner Minshew, 2 years, $25 million, journeyman quarterback, serviceable, can win you games. Definitely better than my opinion than Aiden O'Connell, who was the rookie last year and then his second year this year. I just think he'll be better. And then they get Alexander Madison from the Minnesota Vikings. Zamir White will be the head back, I guess. Um, I don't know, man. Josh Jacobs was their running back last year. He leaves and goes to Green Bay. Interesting. Kind of another team that's probably going to be need more pieces. Definitely kind of like a rebuild feel. This year they had the 13th overall pick in the first round. They end up selecting Brock Bowers out of Georgia, the big tight end that help Georgia win the national title a couple years in a row. Probably should have been three. Yeah, I'll say it. Georgia should have been in the fucking college football playoff last year. Can't tell me they weren't one of the four best teams. Shut the fuck up. All right, little tangent there. Looking at the list of dudes that they drafted, Tommy Eichenberg, linebacker out of Ohio State. Um, they ended up drafted an Air Force dude. Kind of surprising. I guess he's got grit. I haven't done this for the last couple teams because I've kind of forgotten. I'm doing this by myself, remember? Las Vegas Raiders over under win total 6.5. I would probably take the under on that without looking at the schedule. Um, Now looking at the schedule, they've got at Chargers, at Ravens, home against the Panthers, home against the Browns, at Broncos, home against the Steelers, at Rams, home against the Chiefs, at Bengals, then bye week at Dolphins, home against the Broncos, at Chiefs, at Buccaneers, home against the Falcons, home against the Jaguars, at Saints, home against Chargers. Um, Tough, not that bad, not that bad of a schedule. Like some of these teams honestly could really fucking suck this year. Really depends on how just everything shakes out in the NFL. Raiders always give the Browns trouble, so look for them to win that week 4 game. But that is, in my mind, thinking about Oakland Raiders, not the Las Vegas Raiders. And when I think about those games that the Browns unfortunately lose to the Raiders, it's occurring on a baseball field with, well, a baseball field in the middle of the field. Um, which obviously isn't the case anymore because they moved to Vegas and they have that cool stadium now. Um, right now I have them templated as a 3-14 team. Besides the Titans, that would probably be the worst team in the league. Broncos are right there too with 4-13. I don't expect a lot out of those teams. Um, just some question marks, man. Some question marks. Um, but that's the Raiders. That's it, my AFC and NFC South preview. Cole had his own takes on everything, but we have a lost episode now that no one will ever hear because this guy forgot to record it. So I had to do one on my own. During this time, I ended up drinking 1.5 beers. Didn't make as many mistakes as I thought I would. This was actually a lot easier than I thought it would. The words kind of just started flowing off the tongue at some point. Another shot there. Let me just get another one in there. Let's just rattle off a few here. Oh, it's not really going down well. Also, my nose has been itching this entire time. So if my fucking mouth, like my voice sounds muffled, it's because my nose was itchy this whole time. Really pissing me off. But other than that, man, I'm so fucking excited for this NFL season. Um, I say that right now, but in the back of my mind, I know when I'm really excited, that usually means the Browns are gonna suck. So I'm now expecting like a 4-13 year out of the Browns, and we have to draft like Quinn Ewers out of Texas to be our quarterback, which I wouldn't really be that upset about, but you know, it's how it goes, man. Being an NFL fan, it fucking sucks. One year your team's good, next year your team's bad. Unless you're a fucking Patriot or Chiefs fan. Those motherfuckers don't get it. All us out here like fucking grasping for fucking straws, trying to win one fucking playoff game, yet, I have to hear the Patriots fans, whine about the troubles they're going through when you guys saw six fucking Super Bowls in the last 20 years, not to mention how many fucking AFC title games you were in, and now the same thing with Chiefs fans. Like, dude, be thankful, man. Like, when the Chiefs run ends, which probably won't for another 15 years, like, you're gonna be so fucking happy. Like, you should be at least. And like now these young Patriot fans are seeing the other side of things where like they have to build a roster. They have to draft a quarterback. They have to find pieces that are going to fit into their roster. And the biggest thing too, new head coach. Bill's been there since fucking the 2000s. Early 2000s, I think 1999, 2000 was his first year. Um like That's unheard of these days in the NFL of a head coach being there that long. Like you obviously had to have success for this amount of time in order for him to be there that long. But be thankful. Like I feel like the Browns are finally like turning it around now, but I see teams like the Washington Commanders who can't even figure out a fucking name. And they've like done nothing the last like 10 years. Like since RG3. Well, I mean Kirk gave him a couple of good years too. It makes me happy seeing like teams like the Jaguars turn around. And then internal to the AFC North, like the Bengals. Yeah, they had those Andy Dalton years, but you never knew that. You always knew that he wouldn't fucking beat, the Patriots in the playoffs. They get stomped. Like him and AJ Green, they were good, but they weren't Super Bowl good. Who's another team? Lions. Makes me so happy to see the Lions good. But all right, that's a wrap for MnM going deep this week. I'm kind of just going on a spiel here at the last little bit. Um, Cole and I will be back next week. Hopefully I'll remember to press the record button this time. Let me take another shot. Let me polish this one off. Let me polish this one off for you guys. Nobody's watching. Nobody's listening either, so what does it fucking matter? You want me to just rip a couple beers? Just rip a few? Like talk about anything? Oh, talk about anything. Um, I don't know, man. I kind of want to get my doctorate. That's really been on my mind lately. Doctor what? Doctor being an idiot. Um, but yeah, I'm pumped for this NFL season. Cole and I will be back next week for MnM going deep. Both M's of the MnM are going to be back. Um, this was a punishment. I did have a lot of fun with this. If you guys like this, like, subscribe, say some shit in the comments. Maybe I'll do a couple of in the week episodes or something. Maybe Cole and I don't touch on something, so I'll hop on for 10 minutes, give a spiel, and talk to you guys. I've had Stranglehold by Ted Nugent stuck in my head this entire time. Come on, give it again now, baby. Like a dog in heat. You got me in a stranglehold, baby. All right, let me chug this beer real quick, and that's it. Next week, new episode, preview week one. Cole and I will give out who we predict to be in the playoffs by conference and Super Bowl picks next week. While with the week one preview, following that, the week after that, we'll obviously get into our downs with first, second down, third down, fourth down. First down being the review of the week before, second down being the preview, predictions, and then our picks. We'll have a better system this year than last year, and we'll come up with a punishment. Um, I think I named the punishment a couple of days ago. That was pretty good. All right, let me check this beer for you guys. All right, went down like water. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. I love it. MnM Going Deep.